Running fans, jumping fans, throwing fans, all around athletics fans. Welcome to Talking in Ovals. How's everybody doing out there on this Monday, February 3rd, 2025? For those keeping score at home, it's only been a few days since the last episode we did on Thursday with Cole, but I am here. Dave, you're back. What's up, Dave?
Not much. This was the first weekend, I've been so focused on coaching here in NJ track for high school that I felt that feeling that track is back. Like I felt it this weekend. I was watching some meets. I mean,
Track is back, man. This weekend
records
at
going
the
down. You got
college and pro
340
level, my God.
high
Between
school.
high
Quincy Wilson,
school, Quincy Wilson, Ethan Strand over there running
348. Are you
the
kidding me?
third fastest indoor mile ever. Like
He's a college kid.
Cam Myers set the Australian record in the
Unreal.
3K. It was such a great weekend for track and field, and it's nice to see that there's we talk about, are we going to continue the momentum going, and we are absolutely doing it. I saw Josh Kerr with some awesome trash talk in the 1500, talking about, what was it, Marco Arap's like, I
Jakob
want to
with
run
some trash talk too.
He's like, I
Jakob,
want to run a 330. And Josh Kerr's like, well, that's cute. And I love all that.
bring it.
So I'm ready for it. I am pumped. Before we get into all the fun stuff, wherever you're watching from, we appreciate it, whether it's on X, Facebook, YouTube. Please go give us a follow, a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment because it's all incredibly appreciated. We love it all. And if you're listening to this via podcast form, once again, thank you. Leave us a good review and a comment. We always appreciate that because that will continue to have other awesome people find our show and our great guests that we have.
Absolutely.
So last week we had a fun show. Well, you weren't here, unfortunately, but I was here hanging out with Cole Crosby, who is a native right around from where we are in New Jersey. And he went from being, I found out, Dave, he graduated with my year. He's a 07
Right.
grad. So we were, talked a little bit about Craig a little bit before the show. And just to see where he is now and where I am, it's insane. He's one of the best ultra runners in the world. Ran from the top of New Jersey down to the bottom, from Vegas to LA, or LA to Vegas. He is a legitimate pro at the 250 mile level. It's crazy. It was a great show. I could have talked to him for 9 hours. It ended up going 2 hours, almost 2 hours. So it was a great show. This week, though, for episode 125, we have another fun show heading your way. We want to bring him in now. He is a coach. He is an author of the Sprinters Compendium. He is Coach Ryan Banta. What's up, Ryan?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on, dude. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and to talk a whole lot of track. You guys got me freaking pumped up after covering all those different things. I was like, oh my God, I forgot that all that stuff happened,
within the last 2 days
between Kerr and the records and the mile and all that kind of stuff, man. It's like you forget, like you have this lull after cross country season for me, before we get into really some of the good indoor track, both for youth and high school people and college and pros and everybody in between.
And I'm excited to announce that in a few weeks, and sometimes this bites us in the butt when we announce things like this with the guests, but I'm going to say it. Megan Hunter, who went out and won the Terriers, I got in contact with her. She ran a 2 flat. She'll be on the show in a few weeks.
Yes,
so I am pumped to talk to Megan. She'll be our first, we have some athletes now that we interviewed in high school that were in college. Obviously, Emma Zawatsky, Megan Yulhorn, or Morgan Yulhorn. Sorry, Morgan. Jesus, your name's not Megan. Morgan. I'm an arse. Morgan Yulhorn. But she's our first one that's going to be like in active college and a monster. 2 flat. Are you kidding me? This early? So cool. So we're pumped to talk to her. But before we get into all the fun stuff, anyone that's watched our show knows what we're about to do with Coach Banta. But before we get into all that fun stuff, we want to talk about, Dave, you and I have been going back and forth on, we've been in such a good spot with this sport right now.
Yep.
And we wanted to take the next level. And we were, Grand Slam's important. Obviously, Diamond League's important. And one of the biggest things we always talk about is people have no idea where the hell to go to find these meets. And if they do, it's behind a paywall. It's really hard. Well, this is something
like
awesome.
That issue has been resolved partially.
It looks like it because Grand Slam Track has made a fantastic announcement. We have Sidious Mag's tweet up here. The inaugural season of Grand Slam Track will be broadcast and streamed across the CW, NBC, and Peacock the league announced on Monday morning. CW has vamped up its sports coverage in recent years by broadcasting NASCAR's Xfinity, ACC college football, ACC. Oh, let's go show more. Cool. I didn't even know that was there. ACC college basketball, LIV golf. Good news for track fans. CW being a broadcast network makes it available to all households with a simple antenna.
That was my biggest point. Yep.
Yes. So for each of the 4 slams, Friday's action will be streamed on Peacock. Saturday and Sunday races will be broadcast on the CW and streamed on Peacock. The Diamond League, which was on NBC and Peacock, has moved to Full Sports for 2025. Grand Slam track highlights NBC. And as you scroll down here, Dave, you have this one right here as I open it up. This is the broadcast window right away. So anyone interested and wants to plan accordingly, this
Love
is
it.
all in time. They have all the dates for all the meets, and I'm going to save this actually right now because this is something important for us in the future because I absolutely want to highlight all this. And to me, this is just so important for the sport, Dave. And Ryan, I want you to jump in first.
Yeah.
You feel about this news, and what do you think this means for the sport going forward?
Well, I always think more track is usually better track, right? More stories, more opportunities to compete, more head-to-heads. I think what the NBA is also kind of challenged with is trying to find a place to regularly catch these events, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm a fan of the sport, but where do I go and find the sport so I can continue to be a fan? And for like the NBA, it's like you got to go to all these different places, and I got League Pass and I got all this. So if we can start to get to a point where it's like, I know that on Peacock or whatever, it's going to be on at this time, at this location, and it's advertised, and that the event, and on top of that, it needs to be tidy. One of the things that like the NCAA had a big problem with was this whole idea of not having the men and women together, having the women on one day, the men prelims the next day, the women finals, and then the men finals. And they're like, well, the competition is too tight and we can't get people to double or triple. And well, I'm like, well, that's the nature of the beast.
Yep.
As a coach, then you're going to have to make a decision based on the actual logistics of the championship. And that's what's going to happen. So for them, it also, though, like what did baseball have a problem with? The games are too long. It's slow. There's not a lot of action. Well, if you can start to squeeze.
I want to say, though, real quick, baseball had a problem. They stopped teaching kids to score the games young. I think that's bigger than everything else that we talked about. It's funny because my day job, I'm a driving instructor, so I deal with a lot of kids. And one of the kids talked about baseball, and they're like, but it's boring. I'm like, it wasn't boring for our grandparents and their parents because they all learned how to score the game of baseball. And they knew every numbered position. So every single put out, they scored it. So you paid attention to every single at bat, every single pitch. So that honestly, to me, you want to solve baseball's problems, start hand out scorecards to everybody in that stadium. You'll get fans for life. But that's a side tangent. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you've got to figure out like what was good about it in the past. Obviously people want to adapt and change, but it's like, why was it fun in the past? Well, like baseball was the thing. It was one of the very few sports when you say professional, there was actually a level to that. Like professional football for a long time until Red Grange came around, it was almost like pro wrestling. It wasn't real. It didn't have that professionalism that came with the title. It's just like, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Just because you put Democrat in the title doesn't mean it has democracy. It's still led by that little fat man, Kim Jong-un, right? So like in track and field, when you talk about having these big events, and one of the things, no offense, to the great Michael Johnson or anything, but when he says I can save track, but not field, well, field is one of the things that makes it entertaining. I got to go to the World Championships, and the format of that World Championships in Oregon was very similar to the format of the NCAAs in terms of we're going to jam pack in 3 hours, just tons of stuff. So there's a field event, there's a jump, there's a throw, there's running happening on the track, or a heptathlon or a decathlon. And there's just something going on all the time. So there's action all the time. And if you get it like that, where it's entertaining and there's struggle and there's competition and there's parity, that makes it fun. When you lose the action or the interestingness of the actual thing at its roots, it takes away from the element of what it is. So like for me, one of the biggest problems we have in collegiate track is the only time they score anything is the conference meet and the national championships. Right. Well, guess what? Mizzou, who's our big flagship school in the state, like if you get beat by Lincoln University, which are perennial D2 powers, like that's on you if you got beat by them. But we should have a score like UCLA and USC used to be prime time.
Well, they got rid of the dual meet though, coach. They got rid of the dual meet. And to me, I know a lot of coaches that, we've had coaches on the show that are like, we love that the dual meet's gone because my thing is, I think we believe kids are way too soft, that they can't handle doing training runs in between, because that's all dual meets are, right? You work hard. If you're competitive, then it gets interesting. But that's interesting for the guys running the 400 and probably doing the high jump at the end of the meet, right? For the 4x4 or the high jump or maybe a long jump or something. The guys in the middle, the girls in the middle, it's very much a training run, because a lot of things, the dual meets, at least with me, unless it was a big rival school with other athletes of the better ones caliber, you kind of knew how it was working out with the top end guys and girls, right? You kind of, you picked your spots and where you were going to put them to get points. And to me, people argue me about this. The dual meets are no harder than giving them a hard track workout, and a lot of times. Right. So that's the way I felt. You have coaches right now that swear by the fact that the dual meet being gone is good. I liked it because I think it taught people how to race, and we see a lot of people not racing now.
But I think there's a big difference between high school dual meets and college dual meets. College dual meets are run at a much more competitive nature because both, usually than they are at the high school level.
Right. Well, and then and you would hope that the difference between the two programs would be a little bit smaller. But now that we don't score anything, you literally could get waxed in every invite or dual meet you're in as a college team, but no one would ever know that, because then you get to nationals, and because you're a hammer throwing power, you end up scoring 25 points. And it's like, oh, but we finished 10th at nationals. I'm like, yeah, but you couldn't beat, the very modest junior college program down the street because you don't have a complete track and field team. Like back to with Mike Johnson, it's like, look, I am very excited that we have Grand Slam track, but the sport is track and field. It is a 3-ring circus. There's a ton of stuff going on with a ton of different body types having success at the same time. It is a spectacle.
The question with that, coach, is I understand, and me and Dave are right on board with you with that, with it being track and field.
Absolutely.
But our biggest issue has been retaining casual fans post-Olympics, right? That's been the biggest issue. There's always a bump in the Olympics. People get to know the name of the Olympic athletes, then they're gone. And typically, the names that they know are the runners, right? People should know who Ryan Krauser is.
Yeah.
Walk around the street and ask people who Ryan Krauser is, show them a picture, and they're going to be like, is he in the WWE? Like, they're not going to know, right? You walk around, Tara Woodall is a fantastic talent, entertaining as all hell, gorgeous looking girl that should be marketed everywhere, right? Who would know who she is? But you bring up Sydney McLaughlin-Lavone, you bring up Noah, you bring up Sha'Carri, you bring up even Jakob. At this point, I'm not as many people, but some people were like, hey, he's the guy. I saw him run. Like, they'll remember. People remember the runners. So while
even Cole Hawker now,
I understand the field side wanting, but I think if Johnson is successful on the track side, we'll see Grand Slam field events as well. I think it's a slow roll of let's get these people gripped in on track, right? Because then you start to then tell your 48 permanent athletes, okay, you're under contract. We're going to have Grand Slam field now this year. You guys also need to talk about the Grand Slam field events.
Sure.
And they're a part of this Grand Slam family. They're under our banner. You're all Grand Slam athletes, right? So I understand what Michael Johnson's trying to do, because the all approach hasn't worked for the ATL. It didn't work for Tracktown USA. It didn't work for all, ATL still kicking and screaming, but it did not work in the all-encompassing way. So I don't mind trying something new. It could fail, but I don't mind the attempt. I get where field people are pissed, but you can also ask most field people, and they'll say, yeah, most people, it's confusing. They see it at maybe an end of a meet, they'll flock to us, right? Most of the time they're off at a corner somewhere. So I see both sides.
Yeah. Well, and then you just hit the nail on the head. Don't put them off in a corner somewhere.
Agreed.
Whatever venue you have them at, it should have everything in one spot.
They should
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, make it make it where people understand, like, hey man, like Ryan Krauser is throwing over like
I
7
say that.
QBs.
We're
Do you know what
working
I
on
mean?
that. I'm
I
doing
say
little videos and things to
I have
try and make
Yeah.
things real for
Right.
people. I'm trying to do small videos. I have planning on doing another one with oh god, why can't I think of her name? Dave, your alma mater. The one
Oh,
that the
Chloe
female.
Timberg,
Yes, Chloe jumping 15 feet. I'm going to do a video about what's the
the
equivalent
pole
of
vault.
her,
Yeah.
what a 15-foot pole vault looks like in terms of real terms.
Yeah,
And
just
I'm going to put
drive down the
Well,
dang highway and the
I yeah.
turnpike, and then look up at a bridge going over it, and it says, "Oh, that's 14 feet clearance." This girl can literally take a pole vault, jump up
over
on
it,
top of a
clear
car,
it.
driving across that while you're sitting here.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah,
and,
no,
those
and that's
things.
I have
Yeah.
said on this show since its inception that about Krauser, like we need to market it more in layman's terms. Like I always say, hey everybody, go to your local bowling alley, grab a 16-pound bowling ball, tell me how
say go to
far
your football
you can
field and
throw that.
try to throw it 25 yards. See if you
Right.
can do it.
But
Or even Mondo Duplantis, right? Mondo Duplantis can you stack Yao Ming on top of himself 4 times, and Mondo there's a good chance he might still jump over him. He'll only go a centimeter over him because he
Right.
wants a bonus, but he will get over him.
But but that's part of it too. And in some ways, like people are like, well, I just want to see how high this guy can go. I want to see how fast Usain Bolt can go. But the conversation is the coulda, the what if that
Yep.
keeps us talking about
That's
it.
why
Right?
Mondo's
That's Mondo's whole
Mondo's
thing.
doing it brilliantly. He
Yeah,
keeps
and
he
Sergey
like
Gupta,
he can go higher.
Gupta,
Was the best
yeah,
too. Ogre
did-
Brits too. I mean, Ogre Brits
Yeah.
too was no one.
Yeah.
Like they're smart. They break it this much because they get paid every time, and it keeps the intrigue. You're right. Like Mondo could go up now.
Probably go about a
high.
foot higher, honestly,
Yeah.
but he's smart. And the thing
Oh,
is, I think we need to get to layman terms. We said it on this show before, but when people ask like about like you said, coach, they want to see the fastest. They want to see this, how
Right.
fast. But it's like, okay, does Saquon Barkley set the rushing record every single game? No, he doesn't. We acknowledge he's great. If he breaks 100 that game, that's a milestone. We need to get people to understand that
You
you're
can't run
watching a collegiate meet. These kids run sub 10. These guys run sub 10. That's a milestone. College or not. Like you are watching an incredibly talented runner. You get to high school, they're sub 10.5. That's a milestone. That is what is considered peak. And then you have your exceptions, right? You have your ones that are winning nationals. Okay, they're running, 995, 992, 9. You know what I mean? They're running
Right.
those levels. Okay, we're watching Saquon in his greatest game right there, right? Like so, like people are looking this weekend. Did Noah Lyles, did any of the sprinters set records in the 60? No, Noah ran a 6.62. He's fast.
It's early,
right? But that's Saquon's performance in week 4. It's like we need to start getting people to understand the casual side of it. And I think Grand Slam could definitely do that.
Well, and here's the thing: you gotta stack the marketability, right?
Yes.
So you've got Sprint, 2 seasons of it. First season I thought was great. Second season without Sha'Carri really being a part.
Wasn't as good.
She was there in the background,
Yeah,
but not one of the
wasn't as
main
good.
storytellers. Everybody watched the Olympics, so everybody kind of knows what happened in the Olympics, where in the World Championships you might not. And I felt like how they tried to model that after F1 was great. And then like people who were complaining about like, oh, it didn't show this or it didn't show that. It's like, look, no one wants to watch 16 repeat 200s with short recovery. Nobody wants to watch that. People want the drama, and they're like, oh, but that's not real track. I'm like, listen, you guys are like Star Wars fans. Nobody hates Star Wars as much as Star Wars fans. Track and field people do so much self-hate. It's like, enjoy what we got, like you said, to get the normies in, then stack it with these leagues. And what would be really good is they're able to flip it around a couple weeks after those meets have happened to have those episodes then show up on Netflix. So you're getting close to it like Hard Knocks might be or something like that you can market it in multiple ways. Make it something that's important.
Yeah,
Dave, I'll give you the last word real quick, and then we'll jump on to our next screen that I want to see, and then we'll get to the real show.
Well, we're talking about Grand Slam, right?
Yeah. I'll give you the last word. Well,
I think the favorite thing that they're doing is that they're making their athletes available. Like,
oh, good. Hey, you're skipping ahead, damn it, Dave. Here we are. Now
Oh,
you could talk about it. Go ahead. That's
okay.
what we were gonna do.
Okay. So no, what I'm saying, but like this weekend, you can go to New York City Fleet Feet and you can run with the racers. It looks like you're gonna have Cole there, Grant Fisher, Yared. You know, you're gonna have Cranny. So you're gonna be able to go for a run with these athletes, and I think that's a huge step in the right direction to really help the sport grow more.
Here's
Hey, Dave,
my only
can I ask
issue
you a
with this.
question, Dave, real
Oh,
quick?
go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Does
go ahead.
Hall never smile?
I don't know,
Like
man.
she seems like she's got a smile on her face all the time. Never seen somebody in so much smiley action when she's at the end of a 1500, just
Yeah.
like running 1,000 miles. Never seen somebody enjoy running so much.
Here's the thing that, I get right now they didn't put anybody's name, right? They should have their names on there for now. At least their last names, right? They should have their last names there to start that marketability. Because then if you see this, I'm going to share it with my casuals. Who knows? Algorithms are weird if anybody else sees it, right? But there should be last names on there for everyone. Because then if you get a person that you drag in there and say, watch Grand Slam with me, then they could look and they could say, oh, that's that Fisher guy. He's leading the race. I saw him on a poster. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's, that's Jessica Hull. Like, I saw her. She has a real pretty smile. I saw that. Like, you can get these things and that will be noticed. So
Right.
that's where
Yeah.
these are where I think we miss things too. I think this is Michael Johnson and them, not to be hypercritical, right? Grand Slam's doing awesome things, but these are the minor critiques. I'm being a Star Wars fan where we should have their names, somewhere there because people still have no idea who the hell Cole Hocker is. Okay. I'm sorry. We do. Maybe some people that watch the 1500, we are now how many months removed from the Olympics? You put Cole Hocker there, they'll be like, does he surf? No one's going to know what he does if he's not in his singlet. Okay. So it's like, I think we should get names there, but I can't be critical because this is awesome. They're doing what we said they should do, Dave, like you said.
Yeah, get the athletes out there. That's the biggest issue that we've had is you don't know who's running in what meet, and then they can pull out 1 or 2 days prior. Having these people under contract is huge because they have to show up. I mean, obviously, if they're healthy, but they have to show up, and where they're going to be, in which meet, in which city, and now on what TV channel and at what time, and that's huge.
Yeah,
because
and this
no more
right here-
scrolling.
This
No
right
more
here is
scrolling.
Sunday, February 9th.
Yep.
You arrive at 7:45
This
a.m.,
Sunday.
8:15 departure for the run this Sunday. And it's at Fleet Feet Columbus Circle, 10 Columbus Circle, New York, New York. So definitely go there. But here's also the problem, guys. I'm highlighting this. 8,634 views on X. This was put out. Now, what time did it say?
Probably about
6:50.
so about
Okay.
Yeah, about 3 hours.
That's an awful number for a major company in terms of wanting to get that out on X. Again, not being hypercritical, but this is the fault of our community. And that's the thing. This is our community's fault.
Yep.
Why is
Well,
not?
and if
why
you're
are
if
not?
you're in charge, but if you're in charge of social media like that, like, hey, what are the groups on Facebook that have 30,000 members? You put it right there, you're going to get a conversation started. If you want that link to go right there on Discord, on
Telegram,
Reddit, on Telegram, right? You've got like all these, like on Reddit, there is a super passionate sprint crew, on there. And it's like, if you start funneling this, and then guess what, dude, if you like include these guys, you kind of give them a little insight, you run a couple competitions exclusively to their page and only members of their page, all of a sudden you start to draw a little bit more interest. And I mean, like literally, like it could just be, hey, we're offering two free tickets to the event.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But you got to be a part of this really passionate community to even get a chance at that.
And
like,
is,
again, cool. Yeah. So
the combined 48 athletes should all have to mandatory at minimum repost this. And then the ones participating should have to quote tweet it and have to say, hey, come see me here to all of their social media. Like that should be in the contract because how many thousands of followers do these people combined do they have? You're looking at hundreds of thousands. And especially, Sydney's not on that thing. Sydney should have to make a video for everything that they do, okay? I'm sorry. I know Sydney doesn't like the limelight, but unfortunately, Sydney, you are our biggest and best athlete in this sport. Bigger than Sha'Carri, bigger than Noah, because you're the Michael Jordan. You are the Wayne Gretzky currently of this sport.
Oh, yeah.
And I get it. We are lone wolves a lot of times in this sport, but now that she's on with Grand Slam, there needs to be something in there where, I respect that she's religious. She wants to be with her family, but you're the best ambassador we have in this sport. And we need her to be more out in front. I know that might be unfair to ask, but Sid's talent is as good as we'll ever see in the sport. So I would love for her to be out more. And that's just me maybe being a jerk, but
No,
I
you're
want
right.
her out more.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's move on to the real show now. Haha. So that was a good little half an hour.
That was
already
fun.
into Grand Slam. But you know what, though? That's important that we do that, right?
We need dialogue amongst
we need
all of
dialogue
these
about
shows to, to pick up interest.
And again, the biggest thing about that, the CW is the biggest thing about that. And I never thought I'd ever say the CW is the biggest thing with everything or anything, right? But you could
We had
sit
Dawson's
there now.
Creek.
They were the WB then, though. I don't know if it counts.
Sorry.
Or Pix 11 and CW. Who knows what they are?
WWOR.
Yeah, but it's really big because now, again, like you said, Dave, we talked all the time. Me and you had to go search for meets. We were junkies and we had to go search for meets. Dave has bought every single streaming service known to man to try and find a meet.
Runner Space, Flow Track. I got them all. I got them all.
And the thing is, so it's like now it's real easy to just sit there and boom, pop on the CW, use the schedule there, and we can live post about it, tweet about it, put it up there, and drag people to. I might go to my local Buffalo Wild Wings and be like, hey, turn on the CW on the big screen and throw it up there. And sit there and nothing's going to be on that night most of the time.
People watch track and field in bars during the Olympics. There's no reason why they can't all year round.
And these are 96 of the best athletes in the world competing at that event. Because you're going to know, even though Noah's not involved directly, he's not one of the 48, even though Sha'Carri, Jakob aren't, they are going to come in as challengers. And I wonder if there's a barrier for collegiates because it seems like it's a pro only. So I don't see any collegiates participating, which I'm okay with. And I know we've gotten into this before. I'm okay with this being a pro-only league because the bottom line is, I talked about this with Cole last week. There are other sports where who the pro golfers are because they're in the PGA or the LIV. Who the pro tennis players are because they're in the WTA, the tennis
the
organizations, ATP. Again, UFC. Yeah, there's Pride. Yeah, there's Bellator, but it's UFC, right? If Grand Slam can make itself that you're not a pro track and field athlete until you participate in a Grand Slam event, then I would love that. We need a major promotion because the Diamond League is so far away from us, right? We get one meet a year here.
Yep.
It's not our league in America. And that's another thing. The amount of great Americans in this league is fantastic too. Because as a chauvinistic American, I want a freaking league here. Like I want one here that I can go to. I can go to Philly if I want to. That's not a problem. So
New York. Yep.
So yeah. So
and on top of that, like the number one participated sport in high school is track and field, especially when you consider guys and girls. And it's like, how have we not figured out how to make this thing make money? It is intriguing. It is interesting. And you think back to the stars of the past and all of these athletes and some of these people in other countries, like you go to like, London, the United Kingdom, and they're packing out a stadium. And yet in America, part of the problem is, and no disrespect to Eugene, I had a great time there. The facilities,
we've mentioned it many times,
but you don't have the population center there to support. Like when we put these track venues together, like that's another problem. Every time there's an Olympics, we go through and then we destroy the track and field venue. When in reality, it's like that. Now you have a site. Now you have a place.
The only one we have outdoor right now is Icon. That's the only one that I know of that is a standalone pro stadium.
Correct. And like even when the USATF would run the trials and they had it in Indianapolis and they had it at whatever that is, IUPI or whatever it is. Yeah. And now that's not there, and USATF does not own a athletic facility where people can perform. And it's like at some point with the money that you got from Nike and all these trips you're going around with all your 18,000 ambassadors and stuff like that. And I know some people in USATF are not going to like me saying that, but you have to have a venue. You have to have a venue in a big city that is centrally located where people can come and they can race. And there's a bunch of hotels and you have an audience that's enthusiastic about track and field. Because when they do the indoors, We have a lot of
Yeah.
indoor venues. And
Yeah.
so when you do this stuff in Boston or you do this stuff in New York or whatever, and you got all the Ethiopians are there and the Jamaicans are there and they're going crazy. That's
Look at the Penn
awesome.
Relays.
But then we don't. Yeah.
There's no reason why
Yes.
that is a festival. That is a party. My favorite part of ever going to the Penn Relays was wandering off into the Jamaican section because they were always cooking some delicious stuff. And they're the friendliest people in the world. If you walk up there and you look at them and go, "Is there oxtail?" They will point you to the oxtail and they will give you some, okay? Because they are awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's jump into the nitty gritty of the show. First things first, obviously Coach Banta's passionate, intelligent, knows the sport. First thing I want to do is give our PR shout outs that we like to do because Coach Tom Figueroa coming in from Red Arrow Track, again over in Michigan. This time they were over at the Lincoln Athletic Building. And they ran a meet over there. Apparently it's further away from where they are. I'm going to try and pronounce this place. Okay. Ypsilanti, Michigan. I didn't know that place existed, but apparently it's a really nice 300-meter track over there. And there was only 2 individuals that ran. Second grader Blaine Klein, which I think is awesome, ran a 200-meter, and he ran it in 54.68.
There you go, Blaine.
And then a young lady in 8th grade, Vittoria Pericetti, ran a 1600-meter, and she ran a 5:44.02, and she qualified for indoor states with her time. So that's really awesome. It was a smaller group because it was further away, only had those 2. But we always love giving the Red Hour athletes a shout out because, Coach, our big thing here is, and we're going to start coming for you as well, it doesn't matter how fast or how slow these athletes run. We want to give them all shout outs for their PRs because as long as you gave your best effort, the pain is the same. So everyone deserves a shout out, whether it's, a young lady breaking 7 for the first time, or it's a guy running a 4:15. We don't care. We want them to sit there and get their due and at least be able to sit there and have somebody here acknowledge their feat and let them know to keep going. And it's, good work. So that's our big thing with the PRs.
Awesome. Well, I will give you one that happened yesterday. I'm training this athlete. She's actually an athlete of one of my former athletes who kind of coaches in the regular season, but he's got 2 babies at home. So he's like, Banta, will you take the baton of training with this athlete and carry her forward? So she's come over to our facility and trained with our girls, and she fit in really great. And she basically was a college or a golfer kind of kid, and then decided to do running and fell in love with it, and then did cross country and ran really well. And now she's going to go run in college. And this is not a lie. Yesterday, she ran a 400 and PR'd indoors at this Hy-Vee center in Kansas City, which is halfway across the state from us, and ran and nothing spectacular, 64. But then came back, no joke. The very next race was her heat in the 800, and then came back and PR'd in the 800, running a 7-second PR in the 800. Awesome. And I'm like, what the heck does that tell you? And she's like, well, I guess I must be in, a lot better shape. And I'm like,
and then as a coach, you're sitting there going, is there a 3K we can run? Is there a 3K you can get in? Do we need to upgrade your training here? Because you just came back with that.
I still don't like. Now she was very sore today. Yes. And we had a conversation about when you PR like that, that's a super max performance. So we can't just go right back to doing something crazy on Monday. So we were doing some stuff and we had to kind of adjust the plan as we move through today. But, needless to say, very excited for Anna. Anna Dolcherman is her name. And we're really excited to see what she's going to do. And thank God she's not in our classification. So my kids don't have to race against her. It's going to be a problem in the spring. That's for sure.
So a quick big shout out to 2 programs that we always give shout outs to. They battled over at the Shore Conference meet this week, this past weekend.
Dude, let me tell
Tom's River North.
Unreal.
Clipping CBA by less than a point. From what I understand, you were at the meet, right, Coach?
No, I was sick. But
you were sick.
But
so North seemed to have had
North was up
pretty
big.
much locked in, and CBA came in and dominated in the 3,200.
3,200, they got to top 3 places, and then it came down to the shot, and kid from CBA threw a monster 65. I mean, I think CBA had 3 kids over 58 or 59.
Wow.
It was unreal. And then you were just counting up the points, and it was this is going to be so close. It
I
was
have it right here. Toms River North had 93. Christian Brothers CBA had 92.33.
Yeah.
What an absolute, amazing event. And they dominated those two teams. Third place was in Alpin with 17. So it was the North CBA show. And shout out to both of those programs. Shout out to, all those coaches. All the ones that we shout out all the time. Coach McCafferty, Coach Torchia, Coach Bennett over there. It's over at North. Amazing programs. They represent Jersey well all the time, represent the conference well all the time. So congrats to both teams. Worked their asses off. And, we talked about it this year, right? We said early on, North could be one of the best teams in the nation and definitely challenge because their depth was crazy. CBA responding as they always do, going, hold my lemonade, because they don't drink beer, high schoolers. Hold my lemonade. We're going to go and give this team that is a national caliber team a run for their money in conferences. So
it was awesome.
Awesome job.
Shout out to both of them. Fantastic.
All right. So, Coach, I want to get to you because the show is now about to start. So once again, he's Coach Ryan Banta. We've just heard he's really great, has awesome ideas. But we want to get to know you a little bit better, Coach. So first things first, when did you get the spark that becoming a runner, that is something that you wanted to do? When did you get the spark to become a runner? What was that moment that it was I really like this sport. This is what I want to do.
So for me, and I know that people say this and they may mean it in not the serious tone that I mean it, but like sports saved my life. I was a very lonely kid without a lot of friends and not a lot of confidence. And I mean, I was so young, I wasn't going to do anything to harm myself, but I certainly wasn't.
It's a hard place to be. It doesn't matter what age you're in.
Yeah. And I was an only child of only children. And my parents, I mean, they're rock star parents. As an educator, even more, I realize how good my mom and dad are and were to me as a child and how supportive they were. I mean, I struggled through learning disabilities. I've got a thing called dysgraphia. So when I write, I skip words. So imagine that as a 763 page book, how challenging that would eventually, a thing that I was able to do that I would have never been able to do if you would have asked me, in the early high school or even early college, and I ADD and all this kind of stuff, but I was awkward and I was a big guy. I was a big kid. I believe, and now I'm not anymore, but I was in the 99 percentile for height all the way through to sixth grade. I was shaving in sixth grade. Everybody's checking my birth certificate, but then I never grew from there. So I went from center on my basketball team to power forward to short forward to point guard to shooting guard to on the bench. But, and with the sports, I finally was able to have friends, and I finally was, kids thought I was cool, and they actually took some time to get to know me. And then all those things that I was getting made fun of by being too sensitive or too caring or maybe talking too much, when I finally did get spoken to, became more endearing, and we have at Parkway School District, I coach where I went to school, and my daughters go to where I went to school. And we're one of the most diverse high schools. We are the most diverse high school in the state of Missouri by a long shot. And when I mean diversity, I mean the United Nations, every language, every religion, every socioeconomic group you could imagine. We have kids that come from the city still that are bussed out through a voluntary transfer desegregation program that has roots, all the way back into the 70s and late 60s. And so for me, sports opened up a world to a lot of different people that I would have never interacted with without. And so a lot of my African-American friends accepted me early on and all this kind of stuff. And so I kind of fell into this community, through performance and sport. And I was an early mature, and my body kind of transformed after I grew 5 inches in a year, basically, and I ended up being the fastest kid in the school. And it felt so good to be fast. I love the way, and I mean, I don't have any hair now. But when I was young, I had a big old head of hair, and I loved the way that the wind would rush past your ears when you'd run really fast, how the ground would move underneath your feet, how everything else kind of went slow-mo around you. And one of my best friends, my only friend for a long time until sports kind of opened up a lot of doors for me and relationships and connections. He lived like 4 houses up from me. And it was always this thing where I'd like try to get to it when I call him up to see if I could come over. And his parents always said yes, because they were super nice. I would try to beat him, to the door. I'd bust out of the door and jump over the hedges and run as fast as I could, feeling that speed. Yeah, and all this kind of stuff. Now, meanwhile, I'm sure he wasn't like taking his good old time coming to the door, but I always was trying to beat him to the door. Now, come to find out later, there were many times where he's just sitting there watching me bust out of my house as fast as I can. And I cannot imagine how unbelievably silly that must have looked like. But I loved it. And I loved the fact that they thought it was funny that I was moving that fast. And so like there was this kind of almost organic connection with speed. And I was very fast for my age group. I set, in the Hershey games, and they used to have that. I was the state record holder in the 100 and 200 in that. I had all the junior high records, and I was a early mature and very fast for my age group, and it gave you a lot of street cred with the kids, being fast is cool. Being the fastest kid is cool. You are like their own neighborhood freak.
No one cares about the fast distance runner. The sprinter, unless they're the only distance race anybody cares about is the mile. That's it. If you're a good miler, people know about it.
Right.
But then it's like, yeah, but I'm a good half miler. Yeah, but it's not a mile. It's like, wait, what do you mean?
And it's not 100.
Right.
It's like 100, and even the 200 doesn't get as much cred.
No.
100 in the mile. That's it. That's all anybody cares about on the track.
The golden races.
Yeah, they really are. And that's why still today, the superstars of the sport tend to be in the orbit of those events. There's a reason why Noah Lyles did the drastic thing that he did, or Fred Curley even did more
went to the 100
of a drastic thing to get themselves into that marquee event, which also kind of tells you something a little bit about training that, we could get into too, but just the idea of like, everybody's trying to nerf training all the time and make things easier and easier and easier. And it's like, but the best performers are people who came from a little bit of a longer sprint, if you will, down into the sprint. So it obviously,
unless you're Michael Cherry, where you decide to go from the 400 to the 100, then run an 800 and still run a 152, which was insane. And then he's like, I think I died. Like, I forget what he said when he quote tweeted. He's like, I think I'm dead. But and that's one thing when I coached very briefly over at Marist College, my alma mater. And I was, in charge with helping out with the sprint crew with Coach Terry Horton. And one of the things I always stress to our 100, 200 meter runners, because the 400 runners, they're used to pain. You can get them to go do a 3-mile run, no problem. 400 meter runners, you're good ones, because they're fine with that. They understand it. Your 100, 200 meter runners, getting them to do their 2-lap warm up is death. So explaining to them at the collegiate level, and it works in high school too, you go like, okay, why did you get beaten at the back end of that 100?
Sure.
It's not because you're slow, and it's not because they're fast. It's because they're fit and you're not as fit. If you have a good base and you have good strength, you're going to hold your speed for longer. And that's even more for the 2, right? Because you want your second 100 to be faster than your first. Like, that's how it generally is. And you see the splits for a 200, and people are like, wait a minute, they ran a faster 100 than they did in their open. What is this? It's like, because they're fit. Because you ask Usain Bolt's doing an 800 meter workout in every once in a while, right? He's never running an 8, but that's why he can go whip out a 45 when he wants to in the 4, because their fitness, their strength is next level for these elite athletes.
There's something to be said for competitive fitness, right? So it's a specificity fitness. It's like a base of what, right? So I always like Dan Path and Buchek Schneider. They always talk about like having a work capacity. Do you have enough fitness to actually train, to actually do the things that you need to get fast? But at the same time, balancing that speed so that it's not neglected by doing just an erroneous amount of work that
no
really
functionality in your event.
It has no place functionality, right? But also like, how do you deal with an athlete who has a fitness problem, like a Luka Doncic who just got traded because he's fat, and it's like, but he also still scores 30 points a game. So like, maybe there needs to be a conversation on dealing with that, or like Zion and all this kind of stuff. So there's obviously a point where fitness in an explosive sport has to happen, or it is going to be to your detriment. But at the same time, we don't want to take away from what makes them great. And my thing is, what people seem to not understand is like, well, if you're running the 400, you're not reaching max, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, you are. You're reaching max velocity at the exact same spot that you would reach at max velocity in 100 or a 200 if you run the race the right way. But then you got to manage the remaining part of the race.
The phases are the same, but the execution's different as it gets longer. You still have your 4 phases of a race, and the third phase is always the hardest phase. It doesn't matter what race you run, that pre-kickish phase, and it's the one, it's everything, where your body naturally wants to reserve a little to finish strong, is where you need to teach an athlete to push, right? That's the important part, is you don't want to start you're all out there, but you want to maintain what you've started in that second phase. And that's always a challenge, right?
Sure. Well, and it is. And the thing is that everybody has to remember two things. One, and these are two things that are basically common across the board. Everybody who is an elite world record performer, their backside mechanics looks exactly the same. The only difference is the amplitude of the front side mechanics. Number two, if you are a distance runner, every distance runner in men's distance racing has to run low 50s for a last lap. Every female has to run under 60 seconds for a last lap, all the way up to the 10K. So when you had, what's his face, Kennedy back in the day, he was the really good American distance runner, and he'd look really good, right? And then you get to 600 and 400 meters, and the Kenyans and the Ethiopians look at each other and start chirping, and then they take off, and here he is, just going the same pace because he had no speed. So the deal is, you got to combine those two, right?
This was actually addressed yesterday by Grant Fisher. Last year he had a very big breakthrough. So like, why did you choose to run the mile today? He's like, because I'm tired of getting beat on that last lap. So yesterday he goes and he runs a 352, I think, indoor mile.
No, it was he ran. Did they do? I think he did.
I'm sorry, 332.
He ran a 15. He ran a 3. No, 3. It was like 333 high. I think the winning time was 333. But still, he was second, 330 something for a 10K, 5K guy is a good speed.
He's acknowledging what he needs to address and what to work on, so that doesn't happen. He's great. He said, I'm fit all the way through. I just can't go with these guys. So that's why he's running some shorter races to work on his speed.
And we mentioned. Real quick, Coach, we mentioned Matty Centrowitz a few times and the slowest 1500 gold medal of all time. But what did Matty Centrowitz do in that last 4? He dropped a 50 on them. That's what he did. He dropped a 50 in a 1500 meter race, and he took over that race pretty much from the get-go. I think he actually almost wired it. He was pretty close because he started off slow, and he was happy to let it be slow because he knew, like Coach Banta said, I have a 50 in my back pocket whenever I need it. And he trusted that no one else had that 50. And he was right. And he was on that day. Now, that group of elite athletes, any given day, any one of them could have dropped that 50 and won, right? That group there is exactly what Coach Banta talks about. They're all designed to do that. So, but it's exactly what you need to have that elite level.
Right. You have to have it, or you're not going to be, you'll be in the race until the very end. And then you're not going to be you're not actually in the race. You're in the jog. You're in the warm up until it becomes a 400 meter or a 600 meter or an 800 meter sprint. And you just did a 4,600 meter warm up before you got out kicked, and the thing is that people don't understand is like, you can't be doing the same thing all the time. Because then what ends up happening is you don't get the stimulus, the excitement, and the hunger for that particular event. So when Fisher goes out and runs the 1500, he's working on his speed, but he's also getting a fresh attack on something else. But the thing is that some coaches mess up is then they'll go train something and then never compete in it. So like a thing Moo, the thing that I was very disappointed with is the lack of the amount of racing. It's like, I have no problem with
you right on that.
We were saying it all the time.
but we need to be competitively sharp, even if we're competing in things that we're not going to do in the championship phase. So like work on our weaknesses in the off season and enhance our strength in the regular season. And so with Fisher, it's like, hey man, I want this to be fresh. I've already won Olympic medals in this. So now let's go do this and let's see if I can really make something happen and do it where the consequences aren't as severe or serious, that allows you to experiment. And you might figure out, ooh, this is way better, or that didn't really work. But good, we're going to go back now that we're in the outdoor season. We're getting into the championship phase. I'm going to start doing those things that I know are true blue dialed in workouts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was, it's absolutely all true. So I want to go back to you. So I think you have one of the more unique sparks that we've ever heard in terms of why you started to run, in terms of the social aspect, in terms of, just enjoying doing it, the feeling, and I think it's different from sprinters to distance runners, because sprinters, a lot of the times, sprinters have a little more athletic ability than their distance runners. They could go be competitive at other things. So, and most of the time, it's sprinters are, well, I wasn't as good at this and I'm successful here. Well, yours is different. Well, yours is like, you kind of Forrest Gumped it. I just liked running, and you just like did it. Right. And that's a cool spark of necessity in life a little bit in order to feel like you fit in. And I think that's a different type of thing. So now I want to jump into another part that I always enjoy here. I want to talk about your memories from when you first started competitively running up until you were done. What are some of your favorite memories of your time as an athlete?
Well, I always like to prove people wrong. And that is something I still kind of live by, and I like when my athletes prove other people wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I like when they prove themselves wrong in a positive way, where maybe they didn't necessarily believe in themselves. And I'm the only one preaching on the top of the mountain, like, this is where you can get to. This is who you are. This is what you become. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care your size. I don't care. Are you able to do this thing that we've pretty much targeted, that we know where the progressions are going to go? If you're willing to pay the toll, to do the time, I promise you, you can get here. Don't be afraid of being successful.
And what a cool feeling it is when they do it, right? And they turn around and they look at you with the elation when they cross that line and they know that they did it. It's better being a coach than it ever has being an athlete. I 100% say that.
I would say that's true, because it's better to be a parent than it was a kid going through those things, like getting to see my daughters, see Santa come to the house and to celebrate all the holidays and to have the birthday parties and to see the joy in the eyes of wonder and the sheer excitement at doing something they could not believe is real. And then they made it real. You make it from a myth into a true story with a performance. That's incredible, and very, very few people know what that experience is like, because they're not willing to pay the toll. They're not willing to find out. And the reality is, not everybody's going to be a state record holder. Not everybody's going to be an All-American or an Olympian or whatever that is. But man, when you're done with a cross-country season, you're more fit than 99.9% of the population of Earth. People don't do what you do on a daily basis for their entire life. They have to commit from a couch to a 5K, or, I'm never going to be able to bench 220 or 300 pounds, or I'm never going to be able to run under 10 seconds in the 100, or, 12 seconds, or whatever the barrier may be. And then when they break that, they go, holy cow, I actually was able to do, and the sheer joy of that delayed gratification for that relentless pursuit of the perfect performance for them is incredible. And so, I've always been that person. So like when I was on my route of these like youth races and stuff, There was this random guy, and my dad likes to talk to people a lot. I mean, I take after him. He'll make friends with random people, and he's talking to this dad of this other kid, and this other kid, he's big and he's fit and he's real strong. And my dad's telling him how fast I am. And this guy goes, "Oh, come over here, man. Let me take a look at you." This other guy, and he has me turn around. He goes, "Oh, stand up on your toes." And I stand up on my toes, and he goes, "Well, you see, his calves just aren't high enough. He's not going to be very fast because, you got to have really high calves, and, his Achilles tendon isn't long enough. You're just probably never going to be really that fast." And I don't know why that guy said that. I assume he was trying to intimidate me because I was going to race his son in about 15 minutes or something like that. So then I proceeded to, blow his son's doors off, look at him as I was crossing the line.
Look at my calves now. Look at my calves now.
And so then I walked off, and, I was a pretty obnoxious kid. And I looked at him, I go, "I guess high calves don't matter that much, do they?"
Yeah.
As I walked off the track.
And here's the thing. I believe that you have to have swagger. I believe that a great, the athletes, I mentioned, I love what I see going on in the 1500 with all the shit talk. I love it. If you are an elite athlete, if you are at that level, if you are a Division 1, 2, 3 NAIA college athlete, your goal should be a national championship. Your goal should be a world championship, an Olympic championship. So if you're not walking around with that swagger of off the track, cool, whatever. I'm okay with all of you. On that line, you all suck and I'm the best. Period. And if anyone asks me about it when I'm getting in the zone, I'm the best person here. I don't care if I run a 5-minute mile and I know there's people that run 4:10. I'm going to beat them. Okay. Because that needs to be the mentality. And I love that you have a group of 1,500 meter men that are all sitting there.
They're all dogs, man. They're all great.
Going, and just talking about each other. And the Americans need to get involved. I'm sorry. Yared, stop being so nice. Okay. Yared Nuguse, you were 5 meters away from making Josh Kerr third. I would love to hear Yared Nuguse say, "I'm now grown and I don't need 5 meters more to beat Josh Kerr." Where is this? Come on. Cole Hocker should be out there going, "You're going to see the back of my jerseys again in all 4 races." Like, where is this? Like, we need more of that in our sport. We absolutely do.
Well, and for me, it was one of those things where, like, I mean, I wasn't pumping my chest, but like if somebody like challenges you and it's like,
Sure.
"Come on, man, you're kind of like testing me." And it's like, what are you, Jimmy the Greek, talking about my calves not being high enough? What are you doing, some eugenics nonsense with me? I'm like, get out of here, dude. I knew I was, and I hated that people would ever put me in that situation. I was always the guy that, like, and again, this is only when I was young, because as I got older, I had kept, had a really terrible hamstring tear, and I just was never the same. And I was going to be ultimately limited anyway. I was never going to be a Division I guy.
And you also pick your battles as you get older, right? You realize what's worth it and what isn't.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. But in that particular moment, it made me go, well, like, that guy's full of crap. And then I took that as like a sign when I eventually became a coach. Like, I don't know what any of these people can do by the way they look. Yep. We're going to test, and we're going to do all this battery of testing through all of these different skill challenges. And my kids call it the Banta Olympics and all this kind of stuff.
That's awesome. That's a great name.
Yeah. And then when we kind of see what they're good at, then we try to like slide them into these different things. But what's interesting though, is we'll find that like a kid comes back the next year and they might have not been able to do a lead trail leg over the hurdles or get to the front in a shot put. And then they've seen it for a season, right? Or maybe even with summer track or whatever. And then the next year they come back and now they can just do it by learning vicariously from watching the athletes. And for me, I tell people when I go to these clinics, I'm like, look, I'm going to treat all of my athletes like they're heptathletes and decathletes until they're not. Then we're going to treat them like hurdlers until they're not. And then we're going to treat them like quarter milers until they're not. And then we'll decide to start going in the different directions. Because if you can throw, if you can jump, if you can hurdle, you automatically eliminate a large portion of people who are either not willing to do it or not coached because the coach doesn't have the skill set to do it.
You'll laugh at this. We had a coach great coach over in Manchester. His measuring stick was for all the unknowns. He lined them up and had them do a hard 400. However they wanted to do it. Didn't coach them up. And then he watched them as they did it. And he will note, okay, that one's a sprinter. That one's a distance runner. Because he started our indoor program over at my high school, so he knew what he was looking at, and he would just look at it. If a kid went out like a bat out of hell and then died down the stretch, he's like, all right, he's doing ones and twos. If then that's where he would start with them. If they went and they kept a steady pace, he'd be like, all right, go do some mileage. And that's kind of just where he started, and it would mold from there. Obviously, if that kid like a bat out of hell still could run mileage and was slow, he'd move him. But that was like the measuring stick, an all-out
The
quarter, and
baseline.
how you ran it without coaching, no coaching at all. They were all novice. Like if you were experienced, like I was a distance runner, so I never had the line up there. He knew even going into that. I knew what I was.
Right.
So I didn't have to do it. Before the ones that he didn't know, he'd be like, get on the line, go on it all out, do a full lap, and go. And it's kind of something you develop there. I love your Olympics, but
Yeah.
his is kind of like a
He has
mental
Olympics.
Olympics that he had. Like,
Right. Well, and I mean, we even have like our kids, they fill out a battery of questions and they have to draw 3 things that are important to them. They have to circle words that describe them, and they have to write down goals, even if they don't really know, like tactical, spiritual, procedural, and so some of this stuff they won't have any clue about, and then my job is to kind of like help them go through that. But like, if I can see that like they can draw, that probably means they're left-handed, which probably means that they're more artist, they're more creative thinker, right? If they're right-handed and they can't draw, they're more analytical.
my stick figures.
Yeah. Also from those drawings, you figure out what's really important to them. So now you have a
That's pretty
door
cool.
cracked open for you to enter in and have a conversation. Like if they talk about like, I love Marvel comics or something like that. Oh, well then, dude, I'm talking to you about Marvel comics. If you like video games, I'm talking to you about video games. If you put Jesus, now I can talk to you about God. But if you don't put that, well, then we're not talking about that at all. If a kid puts their bed as one of the 3 most important things to them, that means they're depressed. So there's so many, and like truly, like they'd rather be unconscious than conscious. And so this gives me insights that they probably aren't even aware of.
You just gave it away, coach.
Figure it out. Yeah, I mean, if they're listening, I mean, at this point, they're probably like, here goes Banta talking about him, fast when he was young. But and so these type of things, like if a kid circles the word "I'm lazy," they're lazy. But like if they circle like, "Hey, I'm gracious," or something like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, like when you don't show gratitude or you're not being very gracious, now I can talk to you about that. So those are like
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how I'm able to kind of put that stuff together.
And it's kind of getting to know your athletes without intrusive questions up front, right? Because those can be difficult conversations to have, especially if they're struggling. And now you want to figure out where to meet them. And if it's something like, okay, you have a kid who is religious, right? Now, if they're having an issue, if you're, linked in with their religion, right? Because if it's something that's like, if I'm dealing with an individual that, their practice Hinduism, I know nothing about. So I'm not going to talk to them about that because I'm not going to be offensive. I'm a Christian. So if they're a Christian, okay, we could talk about some things that are going on in Christianity, things like that. Like that would help provide them some guidance. But that, that's just one example, right? Like, but that's a really cool idea because you get a baseline for each athlete where they're starting at. Now, do they have to fill this out every year? Or is this a one-time deal?
So we're actually going to fill it out on Wednesday when we do our sign-up meeting. And so every kid in my program does that every year because sometimes it changes.
It changes. Absolutely.
But it's also like, hey, everybody's doing this, not just the new kids. Just like when we do the Banta Olympics, everybody's doing it, not just the new kids, with a few exceptions. So like if a girl is a very large shot putter, I'm not going to make her hurdle. But like the first day of testing is stuff that everybody safely can do. Yeah. And then as we move through the week, it becomes more and more rookie based and not so much returner based. But then you use the returners to kind of show the rookies, like, this is how you high jump. This is how you throw the shot.
And there are also times where the team will sit there and look, and you have an athlete who is just so good that they're just like, please don't make them do that. We don't want them to get hurt. Like they don't want like their fellow peers that they know have an opportunity to do something special get hurt on something like this, right? The athletes will kind of police themselves. They'll be like, Banta, why is she doing this? Go away.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's like
yeah. And I don't put any kids. So like when we do like our hurdle skill challenge, we're doing mini hurdle, right? Then we do like the weird foldy hurdle that falls on its own if you barely touch it.
Yeah.
Then we do the soft hurdle, and then we might do the real hurdle on the lowest height, and then I, being 5'8.5", I'll stand over the low hurdle and I go, look, I can stand right over this thing,
Yep.
and I am not tall, and we go through that process. And so for us, when we'll do on that particular day with the hurdle skill challenge, we'll follow that up with an 800, because what we found with the mile, the kids hate the mile. You don't get people running it. They don't know what they're doing. With an 800, most kids know how to run 2 laps. So at the very minimum effort, they can get through it without walking. And then, like your buddy does with the 400, you can start to figure things out. Then like 3 weeks later, or 4 weeks, depending on when spring break is, we'll time trial with like real events, and that's the only time we time trial with the real events. Everything else is like, I know what the numbers mean. Some of the returners know what the numbers mean, but the rookies have no idea. And I do that.
It's also pretty fun. It seems like it's something too, to like get them buying into what the program is, and then you start torturing them during the year with the workouts.
Well, Dave can tell you the worst thing, as a high school coach, is having to talk about all the rules, right, and all this stuff. So like, I don't do that on day one. We do a big portion of the Banta Olympics on day one, because I think of it as like Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. I want to open up all my presents. I want to know what I got. I want to know what I got. I want to get excited. And then if a kid does something outrageously good and they're kind of on the fence, I immediately have something that I can reel them in with and show them the paper and go, look, dude, this is what you just did in the 30-meter fly. This is what you just did in the standing long jump. Everybody that's in this top 10 with you were all state. Give us a chance. Give us a shot, and I promise you, by the time we're done, you're going to be one of those people that I'll tell a story about later. And again, not everybody will buy in, but more people will than not, without that information or an absence of it. And so when that guy did that to me so long ago, I was like, I'm never going to allow my bias or what I perceive to be after. The number one girl that we've ever had in total points was she was almost see-through. She was so pale, and she was skinny as a rail, and she had this mousy little voice. And then we tested her, and it was like she was nothing but tendon and sinew and like Super Bowl bounce. She ended up being our school record holder in the long jump. She was number 2 all time in the triple, number 3 all time, or 4 all time in the 400. She held the record for varsity points scored in a career. And she wasn't even, and then here's the other thing. She wasn't even going to do track and field, but I sent every freshman in the school a letter inviting them out. And if I know that the kid's pretty talented, I'll write a 4-sentence paragraph in the middle, put it bold-faced, specifically about how I think they can, based on middle school PE stats that I got. And so even with that letter was open. It was on the island in the middle of her kitchen, and she's there with her parents, and one of her friend walks in and goes, "Oh, you got a letter? I'm doing track." And the mom and dad are like, "Well, if Abby's doing track, Ellie, you should do track." And that conversation with that letter, with that paragraph in the middle, brought that kid out, who then I tested, who ended up doing something completely different than we thought she was going to do, because we thought she's going to be like a pole vaulter or something like that, and ends up being the best overall athlete we've ever had. And if you don't do that and you act like Jimmy the freaking Greek, you're not going to get the best out of these kids.
Yeah. So I want to jump in. I want to talk about your book.
Sure.
I want to talk about Sprinters Compendium. I saw a little excerpt, and it's like you wanted this to be more than a guidance for sprinters. You wanted this to be a guidebook for coaches and sprinters alike, right? So what was your reasoning for writing the Sprinters Compendium?
All right. So in the distance world, everybody knows Dr. Daniels, Dr. Jack Daniels running.
JD,
by
baby.
the way, I'm drinking this, not alcohol. But anyway,
we don't know what's in this yet.
So anyway, so we're aware. I'm having a little cranberry juice, a little vitamin C, trying to stay healthy here with the kids being sick. But anyway, His book is amazing, and it was this how-to guide for all the different
Yep.
distance events, all the different performances. It was a one-stop shop, and if you followed the workouts to a T, it would get you into the galaxy of where you needed to be. Now, obviously not perfect. Every athlete's different. Some of the times, in my opinion, might be too slow or too fast for different kids or
Yeah.
whatever. But you could not argue on how legit the training was, and how, the workouts and the coaching and everything that he had proved over and over and over again just how successful
And
the
if you're a
system
novice
was.
coach, it still holds
So,
up. If you're distant and you just go grab Coach
yeah,
Daniel's book, it still holds up. If you don't know what you're doing and you're just school needed a cross country coach, and you were the one that stepped up because you didn't want these kids to suffer. If you pick up that book and you follow those workouts, you have a competent team. Maybe you won't have the best team, but
right.
there'll be a competent group of athletes that get better.
Right, and you won't be making egregious
Exactly.
mistakes, and so you're gonna be less likely to hurt a kid. You're gonna be more likely to bring them to a peak at the end of the year. They're gonna have a positive experience, and then the coaches are not gonna make these grandiose, terrible
You understand about the
decisions.
phases of a season and where they should be in terms of preseason, regular season,
Correct,
championship season, how to split
correct.
up your training. Where if you don't know that, you're looking at it going, well, there's a regular season and they just run races and there's not much difference. So let's just to understand that there are spots as a coach that you need to be guiding these athletes to.
Well, like, you talked to Mike Cunningham, who's
We had
a
Mike Cunningham
very
on a few
close
weeks
person.
ago.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
guy. He's the guy who got me doing my podcast, and I've only had a couple episodes this season so far, but I'm gonna get more in. It's just, again, I got to be a little bit more judicious with my girls being
I
at
get it.
home and the wife. I want to stay married more than I want to be a podcaster. So, I
Hey,
got to
this
make
is
choices.
why this show
But
is on
anyway,
at 9 p.m. Eastern because my kids are in bed and my wife is like, whatever, go do whatever the hell you want at night. Just don't bother us during the day.
yeah, exactly. So I'm up in my little bonus room, hanging out. But for me, I wanted to be able to provide that for coaches, because I personally, after having all that success as a young person, I got hurt. And I then lost my head coach, who was a really good coach, and he and I still coach together today. He's the guys coach, I'm
That's
the
awesome.
girls coach, but he got sick for the last 2 years of my high school career. So I got injured my sophomore year, tore my hamstring, popped it, heard it pop, very bad hamstring tear, and I was never quite the same. And without a knowledgeable coach, I was unable to stay healthy. And also, I was running the wrong events. I really should have ran the 400. I mean, I was a low 52 guy as a
Oh, wow.
freshman for Missouri in the early 90s. That is really fast, and that was in April when I ran that. So it's not, like my freshman year. So, like, I look back at that and I go, oh my God, I could have probably ran a 47 or something like that and been maybe even a state champ or all state, and maybe been a Division III All-American. But while that would have been cool, that wouldn't have changed my life
No.
all that much. But all the kids who have these coaches who don't know what they're doing, and when Mike Cunningham was talking about his coach making him run the track meet at every
We got a
practice,
kick
I
out of
was like,
that.
that is
Yeah.
absurd. Like, that is so absurd. And it's like, look, I would hope that coaches are not making that kind of egregious errors
There's
still
no excuse with
because
all
of
the
the internet.
technology. And also
Correct.
the
But
athletes that are competing love the sport and know the sport, and there's a few of them, and they would bring up a stink. Kids wouldn't stand for that now because there is the information out there.
no,
They would go to the
right.
principal,
And
they
thank
would they
God
would
there is.
go to the athletic director. There would be a mutiny against a coach that does that right
Right.
now.
Right. And that's one of those occasions where probably would have been
Yeah,
warranted,
yeah.
right? Nowadays, people are willing to burn the boat once it leaves the harbor so quickly, before it can even get to its
And it's mostly
destination.
parents and
But
athletes.
yes, and all of that. And again, you can be an expert and be this guy that people come to, and the coaches and the parents will still do stuff that doesn't make any sense, or still go seek some guy because it's an uncle of a cat's dog's neighbor that they heard was once fast, and go train with them and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's like when these people who are charged with the human resource of these talented kids, and not talented kids, but kids that just want to be physically fit and happy, wouldn't it be great if they were able to maximize the potential of those kids with the time that they have and not do something so terrible that they get the kids hurt or make them hate the sport or ruin it for them unceremoniously? And that was kind of the deal. I wanted to make the Dr. Daniels for running
really
formula for sprinting, and I wanted to arm coaches with the knowledge of how to do this at such a detailed level that it would be incredibly hard not to be successful. Now, the book is not meant to be read cover to cover. The book is meant to be read in what am I weak at? And in this particular training system, like I'm not good with the weight room. I'm not good with warm-ups. I'm not good with the mental preparation. I'm not good with training design. Not good with acceleration. And I wanted to arm the coaches with as many tools that they could possibly use. And then it's up to them to decide how to wield those tools, right? And then I went and got a lot of opposing viewpoints from a lot of different coaches. So like Tony and I have gone back and forth on our training. He's the feed the cats guy, and I'm this guy, critical mass system or whatever. And we're kind of the yin to each other's yang. But he's in the book because I thought his system was so obnoxiously different that I was like, how can I not include this because of its uniqueness? It needs to be shown. It needs to be discussed. And if you have a kid that fits that particular situation, then darn it, you're going to need to know how to train a kid that way, because you might have a kid that system is the only thing that's going to work for that kid, whether it's time, health, injuries, event choice, the way the state championship is run, whatever it may be. And then I got people that are the complete opposite, and I've got people that were at the high school level and the pro level and everything in between, because I was like, those are different things too. And the coolest thing about track and field coaches, unlike football coaches, is that track and field coaches were willing to share all of these things and to help. A lot of really good coaches are abundance mindset coaches, and they're not scarcity. Where like if you go football coaches, like they won't even tell you how to do a stock blocking drill with a wide receiver because they're like, oh, you might be able to beat me with that drill.
Hilarious,
like, well,
because like in football, it's what all sports are the same. If you can make all of your athletes great at fundamentals, you'll have a great team. And then the exceptional ones, you start to get a little more advanced, right? But even your best ones, if they're not fundamentally sound, like you said, hurdling is the most simple event, but it's who can do the fundamentals the best, essentially. And then again, you start to add, okay, how many steps in between are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. That becomes a technical side. But if you could just, like you said, okay, you loaded the hurdle. What is your trail leg like? Is your lead leg extended? Are you snapping that lead leg down after every hurdle? Like the basic fundamentals. And it's same with like football, baseball, basketball, every sport. Be fundamentally sound. Are you a distance runner? Okay. Are you moving your head around? Are you wasting your arm stride? Are your arms low? Are you tense? Are you tight? If you're more of, it depends on the style too, because you have the Americans think don't go across your body. That's bad. But then you watch the African marathoners and they're wheeling because your legs move as fast as your arms do. And we've seen a lot more Americans now take that. So there's so many different things, but it's the fundamentals that matter the most.
Well, yeah, I always say you've got to be a master in the classics.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Right? So be a master in the classics before you decide to start doing string theory, right? Like you kind of probably need to know geometry before you move on to trig and calc and everything else, right? So you have to stack these basic understandings as you move forward. And so like some people, Tony, we were having a 4-hour debate about the 400 and how to train the 400 and everything. And he said, what if I told you you're the most complex coach I've ever met? And I immediately said, well, I'd take it as an extreme compliment, because obviously you're assuming that what I'm doing is incredibly difficult, and it's really not.
So,
you
Dave, I
know,
just heard that
because
we need to host them and have an actual debate on talking renewables.
no, we did it. We did that already. We're not. And he and I have done that a couple times, and he and I are really good friends.
That's great.
And honestly, like without him, and me being his foil or him being my foil or whatever, like he doesn't need me, but you know, it has helped me get audiences with different people and conversations with different people. So like truly nothing but respect. And what that comment that when he made that to me, I took it as a compliment, but then over time, because I'm a real good slow thinker, I'm a terrible fast thinker. And I was like, well, oh, he meant that as an insult. You know, and my immediate reaction was like, F you. I think that's the best thing that anybody's ever said to me,
Yeah.
you know, because I know what you're trying to do. But then in reflection, I was like, but I'm not doing a good job explaining it if he can even use that attack. If he can use that attack and people would go, yeah, that's right, then I am obviously not actually doing the thing that I need to do for all audiences in simplifying how I do all these little things that stack for what I call
The
daily
best phrase
wins.
is KISS.
Every day.
Keep it simple, stupid. That
Yes.
is my favorite
Yeah.
phrase is KISS. And and the funniest thing is the coach that promoted KISS to me, and it was a football coach of mine, Coach O'Donnell. I love Coach. He just retired. Happy retirement, Coach O'Donnell from teaching. But he was the most technical person and he knew the game of football so well that his simple was everybody's complicated. And I think as coaches, obviously Tony said that to you. And I feel like once you become a master at some of these events and things like that, especially at the high school, middle school level, it becomes difficult because what's simple for us, we forget is difficult for the novice that's learning. So when we're sitting there going, okay, stand here, step your feet, get your foot up to the blocks there, adjust here. To us, it's like, okay, it's simple, it's block work. But a kid's looking at a block going, do I get my shoe size with this thing? I use it a few times at at the shoe store. Dave, I think you're muted. There you
No,
are.
no, but what you're saying is true. Like it's so important to communicate that. Like I think that sometimes gets lost. Like we have so many great coaches who technically know so many wonderful things. If you can't communicate that message to the athletes, then that
What's the point?
knowledge is used. It's just wasted. You know.
Well, it's a bell curve, in my opinion, in terms of the really understanding at a mastery level. So when you're really novice, it's like, well, just get out there and run fast and turn left,
Make another
right?
left turn.
And then in the middle of the bell curve, it's like you're like this bro science guy, an amateur biologist. You've read all these scholarly articles. You know all the vocabulary words. So thus you're smart, even though you don't know how to apply it in the middle of that bell curve. And then on the other end, you know all that stuff, but it's back to just run fast and turn left. So Harry Mara was really interesting because this goes to what you were saying, Alex, is when he first started writing all of these things that connected when he was coaching all these heptathletes and decathletes, he would go through as a thought experiment and he would write down every single thing he knew about the event. And he would do this as a off-season thing. And I mean, he'd have freaking notepads and stuff. I always bring notepads when I'm on these things because if you're saying something, I want to write down something and talk. But anyway, he had all this stuff written down. It's crazy stuff. And now that the man's way into his twilight of his coaching career, he's still as energetic as ever. But now it's 4 sentences for each event because it's like all this stuff connects. All we got to do is do this thing. And yes, doing that thing is very complex, but that is not for the athlete to know. It's for me to know and for me to play all of the notes correctly to make this thing make music, and to be very, and it's language. And I'm not there. I'm
I think Coach is freezing up on us. But either way, so when Coach Banta gets back, from what everyone's heard, he's obviously incredibly passionate, incredibly knowledgeable. If you have the opportunity and you're a coach, go pick up the Sprinters Compendium. It is a fantastic resource. Let me get it up here on this screen real quick because I just think that everyone should get a look at it. You can go to the sprinterscompendium.com, and that is the website that you can buy the book at. And like Coach said, it is a resource that everyone can use,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's you get quotes here and everything. You could find out about the author. It talks about what you'll learn, and you can hear that, right?
I just like how he modeled it off of Jack Daniels, because as a coach, that's kind of been the staple for a long time. I mean, obviously people take it and, just like Coach said, they modify it to what works best for their program or for what individual that they're actually coaching. But I like how you can just pick up this book and have zero knowledge and be able to at least have some sort of formative plan that you can get your athletes to at least run close to what they are capable of.
Yeah, competency, right? Like we're looking
Absolutely.
for
Competency.
competency.
Good word.
And yeah, and you can get here's the thing, if you can get your athletes being competent and they can see that there's a plan in place, and then they could see an advancement, and you're not always going to PR, but did I start to execute the plan better? Okay, I didn't run a PR, but this race felt good, right? We've had, how many times have we heard that from athletes, right?
Oh.
What was my time? Okay, but it felt
Countless.
good. Like, how did I look? And then you're going to them and you're looking at the splits and you're like, you were a little bit slower here, but you hit this part better. Like, and then you can build on that. And it's also, if you're a coach and you have this resource, you have answers, right? A kid asks you something, it's fine to be like, okay, I don't know, but I'll go find out. And then if you're a coach and you have to coach both between Jack Daniels and now the Sprinters Compendium, you'll get an answer for one of those things right there. So it just makes you a better and more knowledgeable coach as well.
Sure.
So we're looking over here, all these contributors. You have, incredible names over here. You could just look up and down. Obviously, there are a lot of people that believed in what Coach Banta was doing,
Sure.
what Coach Banta was trying to accomplish here. So, this is great. Just going through the website over here. If you want to get in touch with him, things like that, to get something from the book here, you can ask for it.
No, it's good. I mean, it's always good to have any source for all coaches. I mean, I think most high school coaches should know how to coach multiple events, because we are so limited in who we can hire based upon so many different things. So it's just good to have as many people know as many events as humanly possible, so that you can grow as a team and you can build a culture, because in the end, that's really all that matters.
And I feel like what's important about this is now with Jack Daniels coaching, distance coaching book, basically, in the Sprinters Compendium, that's two of the many disciplines of track and field, like we talked about at the beginning of the show. I would love to have somebody write a thrower's guide and a jumper's guide.
They're out there. I'm sure.
And I'm hoping, that we can, here we go. Coach is back. Hey, Coach. Oh, can you hear us? Think he's back. There you are. Are you back, Coach? Can you hear us? I don't know if he can hear us right now.
The beauty of a live podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Unfortunate for those listening on podcast form. If you're watching on video, you can see what's going on. If you're listening on podcast form right now, we're having some technical difficulties with Coach Banta, which is unfortunate because he was just dropping a ridiculous amount of knowledge on us. We can't hear you right now, Coach, if you're trying to talk. We see you, but we can't hear you.
Can you guys see me now?
Oh, I see some movement.
I just saw. Yep.
But yeah, well, as Coach works us out, I see you waving. You're a little skippy still, Coach. But yes, overall, we got a good amount of time here through. We got a good amount of time here. So, real quick, Coach Picton says this one works, Dave. I don't know what you're talking about, but
I'm not sure. I saw that earlier. I'm not sure the reference, but
we love Coach Picton. So
I'm guessing maybe because my microphone was muted, so he was just being a smartass.
Possibly. Coach Pick. We should have Coach Pick on the show.
That is my assumption.
Somebody that grew into because he was a great athlete, you know, but he's someone that also, I
And
think
he's
he
at that
fell
middle school level, like we
think he
haven't
fell in
talked
love
to
with track and field, whether he wants to admit it or not,
and
and because he
we
became a
haven't
hell
talked
of a coach.
to many people at the middle school level because it's a different animal. I mean, I have done it in the past. It's a whole different way of coaching. It's a lot more laid back in a sense. It's a lot more of a teaching perspective than it would be as maybe even at the high school level.
So, Coach Pick, if you are listening and watching still, your time is coming. You will be on the show, whether
Yeah.
you would like it or not. Anyway, I want to get to this other comment, which I think is great. Glenn House over on YouTube. Sprinters Compendium is a great book if you want to understand how to coach sprinters. It gives you the details of how to put together training. I gave this book to a couple of my sprint coaches.
Thank you,
And
Glenn.
Glenn, thank you. That's awesome. We got to recommend it all to everyone. Let's see. Trying to bring Coach back here. And if not, we have an hour and a half. We had well over an hour of incredible content. And,
And we could always have Coach back. We can always have him back on.
I already plan on having Coach Banta back on. So that is not a question of if he's coming back on, but there will be a time that, regardless of how this ends, I think that, if we can get Coach back, that's awesome. But if not, we need to come back and bring back all the coaches, a bunch of the coaches that we've had since we did our
Uh,
little roundtable, and just bring in the minds of some of the great coaches that we've had to kind of get a little bit better with our topical stuff and really
yeah,
get it
I would I
into the
would
nitty gritty.
love to do maybe a little series where we just dive into like coaching techniques and philosophies and whatnot. I do hear some sound.
I do, and we still like we have planned on doing a few roundtables, right? Like we have like a
Yeah.
middle distance roundtable we want to do because we've had some incredible middle distance runners on this
Yeah.
show. We have a bunch that we could do that we could have a good time. We could do like a meet of
And
champions roundtable because
and
we've had
and,
enough champs from meet of champions.
and now it's great because now our audience knows what we're thinking. So that's a good thing. They
I
can
mean,
maybe help us out and venture off and send any guest our way that they think can be a great guest on our show.
you accused me of thinking. I'm never thinking. That's not
True.
my
I'm
strong point.
sorry. I'm
I
sorry.
do not think. That is not me. But
Apologies.
yeah, but overall, I think we are going to put a wrap on this. We'll have
Yeah,
Coach Banta back on.
absolutely.
Let me let him know we're putting a wrap on it. But we will 100% have Coach Banta back on. I think the insight that he has, and even if it's just, we see something going on, um, that we want to have insight on, we'll bring him back on because it was a fantastic episode. He is
Yeah.
knowledgeable. He's passionate. Um,
And he's
Obviously,
coached
like,
sprinters. He's coached, I mean, I don't know if we even mentioned this, but he was the high school coach of Emily Sisson,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Olympian. So, so he's coached, he has a book on sprinting, but he's also coached at the highest level of distance running. So I would like to hear kind of his comparison on, the different ways of training sprinters versus distance runners. So we'll definitely have Coach back on. There's so much more that we can talk about with him. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it too. Crappy with the way that it ends, but everyone, once again, if you want to, please go follow him over on X. It's at Sprinters Compend because he couldn't fit compendium there. So you can go find him there and you'll see his name, Coach Ryan Banta.
Yep.
And you go on Instagram as well, Ryan.Banta. You can go find him over there and follow him on both because he's dropping knowledge all the time as well. So you can go see all those things. If you like what you heard from us, go find us on all socials at Talking in Ovals. We are there. You will see the show once a week. Maybe there'll be a quick video. I'm trying to throw those things up every once in a while. So we have that.
I could do better as well.
Yeah,
I could do better.
listen. We're all going to work. But that's the thing. We all, as much time as we could put in, right? This is, if you guys are gracious enough to get enough people to come watch us, we can make this a job and we could do more of this. So that would be ideal. But overall, no, we love what we do. We love
Absolutely.
being here and doing the show every single week. It's a freaking blast.
Ah,
Wherever you're watching from, Facebook, YouTube, X, we appreciate it all. Go let people know we're out here. If you're listening via podcast, we appreciate that as well. But we're going to put a wrap on this episode. So we appreciate everyone that watched. And we will be back next week with another exciting guest.